And now I think everything should be working. We're here, we're being recorded, we're live on Facebook. And if we're ready, I can take it away. Are you bears ready?
Yes.
Excellent. And I'll keep an eye to let folks in. Hello, everyone. Hello, anyone who might be watching on Facebook. I'm Joan Ilacqua. I'm Executive Director of the History Project. We're Boston's LGBTQ community archives. And we are here tonight with the Mass Bears and Cubs to talk about the Mass Bears and Cubs community, the culture of the bear community, what it means to be a bear or a cub, and the history of the organization in addition to your personal history. So tonight our speakers include Shawn, Lewis, Jay, and Lex, I think officially, although there are many of us also here in the room. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shawn. I'm going to tap you first to tell us about who you are and what you do.
Hello all, I'm Shawn Mims. I'm the president of Mass Bears and Cubs. And basically, I've been the president since January 2018, but I joined the group back in December of 2016, kind of on a whim, sort of, I guess. I had a good friend who was a member of the board previously, and I just happenly mused that I wanted to do some more volunteer work and kind of really get involved in the volunteer world. And he says, "Funny you should say that." And here I am. So it's been a great ride, and it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun and had some, done a lot of great things in the community. So I'm really happy about that.
Excellent. And yeah, so Lewis, do you want to tell us about your involvement with Mass Bears and Cubs?
Sure, thank you, Joan. My name is Lewis. I am the Vice President of Mass Bears and Cubs. I have been the Vice President under 3 presidents. First of all, with Jeff Z, who started Mass Bears way back when. I was Vice President during his last year as leader of Mass Bears until we unfortunately lost him in 2016. I continued on as Vice President with when Mass Bears and Cubs was formed in 2016 with Matt Ecclesiastri taking on and picking up the mantle with his partner, Mike Cody, who happened to be Mr. Boston Bear that year. Been doing this since 2015 when Jeff Z asked me to be a contestant. I found a great group of guys to socialize with. We do things for a cause. We do things with a purpose. When Shawn joined, I remember having a drink with Shawn at our favorite bar, and Shawn saying, I really need to give back. I've been drinking and having fun the last 20, 30 years of my life. It's time for me to start doing something for the community. And, I was glad to hear that perspective of, yeah, let's do something other than the social fund, let's give back. And I feel the same way. I think we've done some wonderful things, and we've raised some money for some wonderful causes in the Boston area for some wonderful groups. And we've also partnered with some wonderful organizations. We can rattle them off later, but we really do have a good relationship with some of the other LGBTQ organizations, as well as some of the other, regular society people. One of them my favorite is Boston Area Gleaners. Very gay-friendly organization, but really they harvest vegetables and fruits that would otherwise rot on the farm, and we harvest them and take them to the area food bank. So there's a lot of things that we do in addition to being a social organization, and now that we're an official corporation, it's even better. So that's, and I've been in Boston for about 10 years. I've actually been an official Boston resident for 5 years now. So, I'm still relatively new. I don't know the old days of I hear about Chaps, I hear about the 119, I hear about Sporters, I hear about these old bars. I'm just sorry I missed them all, but I'm glad to be in Boston.
Excellent, thank you, Lewis. So heading down the line of our featured speakers tonight, at least on my screen, Jay, you are up next. Could you tell us about who you are, how you joined the Bears, and anything else you want to share?
Well, let's see. I'm Reverend J. Saulnier, and I'm a high priest in the Cabot-Kent Hermetic Temple. I came to the Mass Bears and Cubs, let's see, when I entered the competition in fall of 2018 for the title of 2019, and I kind of liked what I was seeing and how they were involved with the community, and I thought it might be a great fit to kind of learn more about bear culture and things like that myself. So I definitely wanted to kind of get more involved, and I think I'm coming up on my 2-year mark, so this would be nice in November. So I'm excited.
Excellent, thank you. And then last but certainly not least, Lex, could you tell us about your involvement with the Bears and how you came to become part of the group?
Okay, so, well, one, I'm Boston born and raised with, I come from a very large Sicilian family. But no, I started with the Bears because, prior to experiencing the bear culture, the bear community, I really didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And when I experienced Bear Week for the first time, that was the first time that, I've really been hit on in public. And that was a magical experience for me. Before the bear community, I had no confidence in myself. I had a hard time, and the bear community really saved me from myself and made me feel like I was worthy of love and affection and attention. And because of that, that's why I wanted to give back to the community and why I joined Mass Bears and Cubs. And, I remember the first conversation I had with Shawn was me talking about, my interest in that, and him saying, well, you should join the board. And I remember I was just like, I don't know, maybe. And then after like the third or fourth time, I was like, okay, is the spot still open? And, I started off as an associate member. And I was really holding off being a full board member because I wanted to take part in the Mr. Boston Bear. I said, win or lose, I'm going to join anyway. And what did I lose? Last place. But I still joined. And, every week I feel like things keep evolving, and I'm just having the time of my life.
Excellent, thank you. And so I should say, for all of us here in the chat on Zoom and who might be watching on Facebook, tonight I have some questions for our bear panelists, and then we'll have time for some audience questions, both on Facebook and on Zoom. And we're just gonna have some fun and learn about the Mass Bears and Cubs. So great, thank you all for your introductions. And I think it might be helpful to start with some of these culture questions, the culture and history of bears. What does it mean to you to be a bear? What is a bear? I know what a bear means, but maybe our audience members, wink, wink, don't know. What does it mean to be a bear?
Grab that one, Louis.
Well, sure, I will. But why not? I've been around the longest, I think, as far as this organization. There's the classic definition of the bear in our community, where it's just like a middle-aged man with a graying beard, and likes to go out and drink a lot of beer and party hardy and have a lot of fun and eat good. What I have found in this community is, number one, acceptance. The whole, for lack of a better phrase, pretty boy, we all love our eye candy. I think it's really important to understand that this community accepts everybody. Whatever your size, whatever your age, there's people interested in each other and meeting each other, making a connection. And that's really where, I think, what Lex has done with some ideas for, the bear colors and representation, acceptance is one of the key aspects. Is, you can be a bear, you can be a chaser, you can be whatever animal, otter, wolf, whatever it is. It doesn't matter in our community. as long as you come in and accept everybody else in the community and be a civil participant. So, you know, the bear community, I think, has been somewhat maligned for being, you know, middle-aged old white men that gather. I have found everything different in this community, especially in the New England area.
Anyone else want to jump on that bear definition?
I mean, I would just say that, I mean, I think one of the things that we often try to do when we sit down and talk is that, you know, we always want to make sure that we're using the word bear in a way that is kind of not narrowing it down to the point of like, oh, it's this particular look or it's this particular attitude, but it, like Lewis said, it's kind of all perspectives. I think one of my favorite things that was ever said from a former board member who he would often get the question of like, well, you don't really like look like a bear. What do you call yourself? And he would say, I call myself a flamenco. And I love that because I mean, I kind of think that it speaks to, you know, what we're trying to do in terms of, yeah, we have this bear identity, but there's also a lot going on in our community. And I think having kind of that broad mindset really gets at those folks.
Yeah, well, I think from what you're both describing, it sounds more like to be a bear is partially to have a certain way of life, to have a certain perspective. And like you're saying, not a specific mold of like, a bear is a man who is over 35 years old, who is X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's wonderful. I think that's a really great segue into this idea of the bear flag and what do those colors mean to the bear community, or maybe not, maybe not mean historically. So Lex, you've done some research into that, right?
Mm-hmm. I definitely have. So initially, the creator or the person who designed the bear flag designed it where he picked those colors to represent all the different races of bears to symbolize inclusivity for all. But, you know, one idea I had that I ended up bringing to the board and, you know, started on this whole big journey in creating it was to make, you know, like the Buddhist prayer style flag banner pennant thing, but do it to the colors of the flag. And I thought, you know, it would be great if we could put values to the colors, like, you know, the gay flag, like the gay pride flag does, all the other ones. And so I took the our motto, brotherhood, camaraderie, and community, and then I applied other values that I personally experienced in the community for like what essentially like saved me from myself. And that was, you know, acceptance, inclusion, comfortable, confidence. Which on a side note, the comfortable is actually supposed to go after confidence. It's my bad for that email. But
I don't think they're in order. Can folks see? I'm sorry to cut you off, Lex. Can folks see the bear flag screen here?
And like
Yes? Okay.
to go with like the colors as well, the reason why I put the values for the colors, aside from the fact of having it spell out the anagram basic, you know, brotherhood is brown because it's like masculine and earthy, and acceptance is orange because it's like warm and like a hug. Community is the gold because it's unifying, bright, supportive. Camaraderie is nude because it's a neutral, equal, encompassing, inclusion, white. It's the focal point of all colors. Confidence is gray because it's professional, and comfort is black because it's, you know, like a comforting hug. You know, like with comfortable for me is, you know, like I was literally at, you know, that like 365 a burger restaurant in P-Town where I was ugly eating a burger, and I was like feeling my oats, it's like chowing down, and the table across from me, there's this guy, like after I'd finished eating, I was like, oh, yeah, he looked over and he said, hey, sexy. And I was like, you just hit on me after I ugly ate a burger? Okay, I'm here for it. And it's like, that would never have happened in any other community, like ever, where I'm so comfortable in myself that I don't even care what anybody else, I'm like ignoring everyone else around me. I'm focusing on this burger and how good it tastes. And right after I finish it, someone hits on me. Like in any other community, never would have happened. So that's really why I really connected with the whole comfortable thing. Feel good about how you look. Like, you are you. Be comfortable and confident, and you're beautiful the way you are. And that is literally like the message I've received from every single bear I've ever talked to. And like in the rest of the gay community, no, it's like all about like, oh, you have to have abs, you have to like look a certain way and be thin and everything. And being part of the community, I realized I'm beautiful the way I am, and I don't need to change that. And that's a big reason why I love it so much.
Wonderful. So,
well, I'm literally eating pasta.
It's dinner time. But also, I think that's so wonderful, because often, like you were saying, the rainbow flag, in the abstract, I know that those colors have meaning. But a lot of times I'm not thinking about the meanings of the colors. I'm thinking about the meaning of the community. And this is a really great partnership of, or intersection of, the values of the community and your organization, and taking the historic flag used for the bear community and making it mean something for you all in 2020, which is awesome. So are those flags, they're going to go on your website, right?
Yeah, currently, I think we're going to use them in a number of different places, but right now Lex is actually going through the process of actually trying to find someone to actually manufacture them as a pennant that can be carried, so that we can carry it in the Pride March and things like that. I just wanted to jump on to something that Lex said, and it made me, as he was talking, and it kind of reminded me of an old memory that I had, which was that going to our favorite bar in the very, very early days, I had no sense of, I really kind of didn't get our community back then. I just knew that, hey, I'm hanging out in a bar and I'm meeting people and it's fun and I'm drinking. So, but, when I started going to the alley, one of the things that I kind of learned within the first few years going there was that I think sometimes our broader world kind of puts us in the mind frame of, oh, only pretty boys date pretty boys, and only twinks date twinks, and only fat guys date fat guys, and things like that. And one of the things that I saw over my beginning years at the alley was that there is something that we all forget, which that there is the diversity of attraction. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, marketing around us doesn't really let you in on. It kind of makes everybody kind of look homogeneous in certain ways. And I think that we should all kind of, that's part of, I think, the thing that we really have to kind of internalize to ourselves. I think it's that moment when Lex was, finishing his hamburger, which just sounded good just based on the way that Lex described it. That there are there's not only different kinds of people in terms of colors and shapes and heights, but there's also a variety of attraction out there. There's no reason for you to be ashamed about what you are, because believe it or not, somebody out there is going to love that. I think, and I so do not know the comedian's name to credit her properly, but there was a great comedian who said, you guys out there, you shouldn't be hating on yourselves. The one thing you got to understand, no matter what's going on with you, somebody's going to love your ass. You could have, I think the way she put it was that you could have buck teeth in the back of your head. Somebody's going to love that. And we should all kind of, I mean, that's an extreme example, obviously, but we should all, as people, keep that in mind, on both ends of it. What you may like may not be what other person likes, but that's okay because, if we're all okay with each other's likes and dislikes, it creates a more inclusive environment.
Excellent. So you mentioned the old days. Old days. And we have a question from Facebook actually that I think would be interesting to know before we sort of get into the semantics of how do you join the Bears. But how long has Mass Bears and Cubs been around?
Well, as a group, so the original group was started by Jeff Z back in, I believe, 2011. And so, and there were predecessor groups to that. There were also kind of bear identified groups also. But if I got to talking about the whole list, we'd be here forever. But he started that back then, and then shortly after he passed away, the group transitioned to Mass Bears and Cubs, and then we got to this point. Sorry, I'm trailing on the question. What was the original question?
Oh, no, that's perfect. The question was just how long has like this
Oh.
iteration of Mass Bears and Cubs been around?
Of
So
this
you're coming up
particular
on
iteration, this particular iteration, we're proud to say that we incorporated last November. So we are now officially a nonprofit organization. Prior to that, we were just a social group, just trying to, move ourselves along. And that was on for, somebody help me here, 2 years, 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
Something like that, yeah. So the group has been traveling along and evolving, and I get the feeling that there's even more evolution to come in the future.
Yeah, and it would be super interesting for those of you out in Zoom land who may have been part of those predecessor groups, for us to do a little history digging later on into, how did the Mass Bears and Cubs come to be in 2011? So, but now in 2020, let's say someone wanted to join the Mass Bears and Cubs. What would that take? Do you have to be a bear to join the group? Do you have certain rules or stipulations?
I think for us, no is the answer to that, to the first question. I think when we approach folks and when folks approach us, it's more about not being, rubber stamped with the bear label, but more about you wanting to give in your community. So, I mean, to be quite honest, that's the first priority, is to want to have that, because that's what we do. The other thing too is that you got to be able to have fun, because we have a lot of fun. So, I mean, one of the things I often say is that in the process of doing all the things that we do, we try our best to have fun, and we've had a lot of fun. But the other thing too is that you kind of have to also be a part of that principle of inclusion and understanding that we're not, that this isn't like a bear. Like whatever your traditional idea of bear is, and that we're not going to stick to like physical types or things like that, but it's more about being a resource in the community.
Excellent. Does anyone,
yeah.
I was going to say, have anything to add on to that? Louis, Jay, Lex?
Not all of us are bears. Some of us are cubs,
Well, and some of it, what I also want to say is like, there's a lot of younger guys joining, and it's like, that's great. There's a lot of people that aren't furry and have the typical bear beard. It's nice to see people that are willing to come and interact with us that don't meet that definition of having a middle-aged stomach and facial hair. That there's a variety of guys now when we go to P-Town and Bear Week, it's always fun to rub the furry backs. It's not a physical requirement, and it's really just let's see what we can do to have some fun but also contribute back to the community. I think that's really the message we need to give to anybody that wants to join us.
And I guess you could say also that you have to jive with the basic values
Making it a thing. So what is the difference between a bear and a cub? Is it an age difference, or is it a mindset?
Go for it,
I
Jay.
feel it's more of a mindset. Right? I think it's more of a mindset than age or, whatnot. I mean, I am 41, but I call myself a cub.
It's like young at heart, young bear at heart.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Excellent.
on that topic, Jay, I never knew you were 41. I thought you were like 38.
Yeah, I actually didn't know you were that old either. That's a shame.
It works for me. Yeah, I like that.
But it's funny with Joan, as I walk around oftentimes and I talk to people and I have a tendency to, for lack of a better way of saying it, probe. And I will say, so what do you think an otter is? Because I haven't nailed it down to one particular thing. I think that if you went through a very broad group of people and asked them like what they thought a cub, otter, bear, beaver, whatever the other things are, I think you would not get, I mean, there might be a couple of parameters that might be somewhat consistent, but I think you get a broad swath of answers for all of the categories. I mean, the other thing too is that, in looking back, and looking back at old images of things that were labeled bear, even going back to like the 60s, it evolved a lot, at least in the rags of the past, what the image of a bear was. Because I can specifically remember seeing the 1970s when it was kind of like slightly trimmed muscle guy with a lot of hair on his chest and all of that kind of stuff. And that was what you saw, at least in the publications that I was able to look at. So it's changed a lot.
Excellent. So we have an audience question. We're going a little off format, but I think that's okay. Dan, do you still have a question or a comment?
I do actually. I just came off a call with my church. We have a weekly tea with our ministers, and today's prompt for our discussion was, when was a time that you made a decision? And it was very open-ended, and it ended up being a lot of coming out stories, which I kind of knew was going to happen. But I had to describe to people what an otter is. And back to your point, Shawn, I used to be furry, but now that I'm 53, I'm not as furry as I used to be. And so like, I'm more of an otter now. Just trying to explain that to people. But one of the things, there's a couple of keywords that I've heard so far is acceptance, brotherhood, community. And we're doing a lot of work with the community, especially in these days right now, to reach out and to support those that are in a world of hurt. And that's, I think, what one of the strengths of this group brings to bear. And I'm very happy to learn more about that and how I can contribute. The notion of diversity of attraction is interesting, but the lesbian who asked me the question about otters, it was kind of odd to describe that to a lesbian.
I can imagine.
Well, you can try right now.
It was like one of the most awkward moments of my life. I'm like, well, how do you call your friend who's got a lot of hair on her? So anyway, thank you for including us, and well, I say us, my dog and the coach, in the conversation today, because this is extremely important, and I think the sense of community is kind of where my heart is at. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Dan. So yeah, I think that is a great actually segue into some more questions I have about what do the Mass Bears and Cubs do, and because you've all talked about kind of how you've gotten involved, what it means to you to be part of the group, but could you tell me about the sorts of things that you do as a group? And Lex, I see that your hand is raised, so if you want to hop right on.
My comment is not so much about that question, but more of like an interesting fact to know is that during my research for like the values and everything, I also stumbled upon that apparently there is also like a sister community for the bear community, and that's with the more burly lesbians, and that apparently they call themselves Ursulas. So, you know, it's kind of like a little fun factoid. Also, and also, you know, my role with the Mass Bears Cubs is I do a lot of like membership and volunteer like recruitment and stuff. So, you know, if you have any you know, interest in volunteering for us, you know, send me an email.
Awesome. So yeah, tell me about what you do.
Yeah, Shawn, I can take that one because we used to joke with each other about, yeah, this is a group of guys that loves to get together and find an excuse to go socialize and drink. But really, you know, our winners of the Mr. Boston Bear contest or the Mr. Boston Cub contest really have been the ones to step up when we ask them, do you have a cause that you want us to support? And one of the ones that we've been supporting for a long time is going to the My Brother's Table up in Lynn. That was volunteering there was originated by Stephen Pereira, one of our earlier winners back then. I have the year somewhere stored in my mind. But Stephen actually wanted to give back to the community. And so, you know, we would get together and go at the Boston Living Center, number one. It is non-denominational. It is strictly a community service organization that they feed anybody. You don't have to prove yourself to be homeless. You don't have to be disabled. You don't have to be lesbian, gay, LGBTQ. It's just like, if you're hungry, you can go in and eat. And it's a wonderful experience because we prepare the food, get the venue ready, we serve the food, and then we clean up afterwards. And there's stations for various activities throughout that day. It's a wonderful afternoon, and the camaraderie really, really shines during those events. And we have a lot of our board members as well as other people in the community that join us. That's one example. The Boston Living Center is another event where in the heart of Boston, in Mac Bay, a block away from the Back Bay Orange Line station. Once again, we go there, we prepare food, serve food, clean up afterwards. And once again, that's a venue where it's like people are happy to get a warm meal and get out of the weather, whatever it is, whether it's the heat of the summer or the winter cold. You know, we partner with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. We partner with Gay for Good. We've gone to events at a senior center where we took flowers that would otherwise have been discarded by Whole Foods, and we packed them into bouquets and took them to a nursing home. So there's a lot of things we do. The Boston Area Gleaners, and once again, we've done that event. There's a lot of community organization service kind of things that we do, but we also do that for fundraising. Let me see, Arthur, in our past, he was one of our Boston Cub winners, wanted us to do some fundraising for suicide awareness because we all lost a good friend who, you know, we all met and we were, you know, good friends at the alley. We lost him to suicide. And so we had a fundraiser for Samaritans to, you know, let's bring some visibility to this and let's get them some funds. And, you know, I know we raised over $1,000 that night. So once again, we're glad to help out with fundraising. We're glad to partner with some other organizations in the community. And, you know, the other thing is, you know, like, you know, Dan had said, we're looking for that diversity, and it's nice to be able to connect with members of the community. And then when we do the parade is always a fun event because you get a taste of everything when you're joining the Pride Parade.
Awesome. Do you want to, I'm just thinking about the sorts of events that I know about that you do in addition to these other volunteer things. So you have, you know, some of your standing social events where people come together. There's tea dance, I feel like there's a trivia night. I feel like you have very busy calendars when we're allowed to gather together.
Yeah.
And so how do you all manage all of those things?
By the
How
seat
does
of our
that
pants. No, it's to speak to that. It's a challenge. I think part of the one thing I think that Lewis, we always like to point out to, especially when we're recruiting for new board members and volunteers. I mean, we all try to remember that hopefully we have day jobs. Hopefully, I say hopefully, given the current situation. But there's life, and then there's also these. You have this commitment you want to give your whole heart to, but you also have life happening around you. So we try to kind of be understanding of that, but not try, but we actually are understanding of that. But it's we meet very frequently, and we picked up the pace when the whole COVID thing happened. And I think part of it was that um, we went from being able to see each other almost daily, to, okay, I have to stay very far away from you. And in the beginning days, I'm not sure if we can go outside after a certain time. So, that was kind of a thing that really kind of was a shock. And so we decided to kind of meet weekly just to kind of, not only just to continue our business, but of planning and trying to figure out how we're going to adapt, but also just to see each other, even if it's on a screen. So, I mean, we do those kinds of things, but, the trying to kind of keep up with the schedule of social events, and then also kind of needle in special, fundraising events and special regular events that we have, such as our boat cruise and things like that. It is a challenge, but what's been great is that, and I think Lewis will speak to this too, maybe, is that over the last couple of years, there's been a couple of times where we've grown to the point where we have so many extra people helping us that it sometimes was scary easy. I mean, it was still difficult,
Yep.
but
Yep.
scary easy. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least point out Tony C hiding over there in the corner has been a big help in helping us kind of like expanding our capacity so that we can kind of keep things going. He's been a huge help on the transition from being a social group to being a registered nonprofit organization. The other folks that are with us, I mean, Indigo, who I'm pointing out, sorry, Indigo, but I mean, he's been a big help at, making sure that like our Facebook group is well moderated and we kind of don't break any Facebook rules, but, still let people have fun and, try to keep the arguments to a friendly level if you can do that. And he's been great watching those things. So I mean, it's to answer the question, it's been a challenge to kind of keep things going, but in terms of just kind of managing all the schedule and stuff, and then suddenly stopping and then having to adapt to a whole new world. I mean, I think tonight I could count tonight's panel discussion as a success in that adaptation, because we have a nice audience and we're talking to some great folks. But it takes quite a bit of organization and some very good heads and hands. And I mean, luckily we've grown that pool, and I hope that it continues to grow.
So the other thing I want to add is, we have a good time with our social events, whether it is the trivia, whether it's, the social night at Cathedral Station, whether it's Bears Tea at Club Cafe. But, one of the things that we have learned is, yes, to ask for help and get help. For instance, with the Bears cruise, we didn't have it this year because of the social distancing. But between that and the contest, just having the ability to get for people to help. We had a question from Raul about some of the sister organizations about when we approach and that are not LGBT, like Boston Area Gleaners. They are not a gay organization. They are very gay friendly. They have been really good about letting us post and do an event with them. not a lot of organizations seem to have a problem with that. But, once again, our charter is to look at and help the LGBT community here in Boston and the New England area. So, like Samaritans, once again, they are not exclusively an LGBTQ suicide hotline, but they were willing to work with us as a community. Bagley is gay, but Bagley has a sister organization called Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Once again, very friendly, gay, willing to partner with the gay community, which is fine with us. And so, Raul, to answer your question, we haven't had any resistance yet. Yeah. So that's been encouraging in the Boston area.
I mean, and Raul, to add to that, I mean, one of the things that I hope we do in the future is to kind of work with groups that are interested in having our help, but also are willing to connect with us too. I mean, one of the things that I think Lewis did mention was My Brother's Table. It's not an LGBT organization, but one of the things that I love about going there, I mean, besides the experience of just doing the work, because there's an amazing, most of the time I end up working in the dish room and I have a blast. And I mean, as a person who's a 9-to-5er who sits behind a desk most of the time, it's kind of an amazing experience to do.
I have to piggyback on that, because more than one event at My Brother's Table in Lynn, we have shared the volunteer day with, like, the church ladies.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking a bunch of middle-aged suburban women from some suburban church, and we're like arm to arm, elbow to elbow, working with a very conservative religious group.
Yeah.
And, they may not be the most comfortable to begin with, but once we start explaining, and they say, what are Mass Bears and Cubs? And you say, it's an organization for gay men to join and do some volunteer work and also have some fun. And they just look at us like, really? You're volunteering? You're having, and it's like, yes. So it's, it's happened on more than one occasion where we've had that opportunity to, kind of spread the love and educate those that otherwise would not have voluntarily interacted with our community.
So bear outreach.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting because you do so much, and that's as somebody with the History Project, we've done some events with you in person. I'm so happy we get to do this event with you digitally, so we can talk to some people who are not in the Boston area but who are interested in your organization and the work that you do. And I think that's so important and interesting that you are bridging not just the LGBTQ communities, but also working with other allies toward common goals. It's important work.
Yeah.
So I am curious again about these events. So we do have a question about Mr. Boston Bear this year, which I'm sure you are also thinking about. But can you tell me about the Mr. Boston Bear and Cub competition? I've never been able to attend, but it's on my to-do list.
Okay. Well, in general, I guess I'll take at least the first part of that. In general, like we have, so we solicit from the community, and that's anywhere we can plaster our name to ask for applicants to the contest. And there are multiple segments in the contest, and help me out here if I forget some of them, but there's a bare minimum where the contestants do like a little striptease-y kind of dance, obviously not completely striptease, but there's that. And then there's also bear talk, where the contestants get a chance to kind of talk about a particular subject. And anyway, so there's a couple of other segments, and we actually have a whole section of judges who are people who've judged competitions in the past. We've also reached out to new folks to judge in recent years. Some of them are previous contestant, previous title holders. And so there's a very rigorous, I couldn't even begin to explain it very quickly for this discussion right now, but there's a very rigorous scoring system so that there's no way to kind of one judge can weight it over another or anything like that. And it actually happens over the course of basically 2 days, in that over the course of 2 days, where traditionally we have it at the Alley Bar, and the contestants will come in on a Friday and kind of work the crowd and try to sell raffle tickets as a fundraiser for part of the event. And then the next day in the afternoon, they actually have individual contestants have interviews with the panel of judges. And the judges get to ask various questions, and they get to rate them on, just their answers to those questions about community and about themselves and so forth and so on. And then there's the competition where they perform in all of those segments. And then also as a part of the competition, there is a piece called the Brother Bear. And that's where all of the contestants themselves get to vote on who was the contestant that was most supportive of the group. And part of the reason why we do that is that, although it's a competitive competition, we also want to have like a sense of camaraderie in that group of contestants. And, they're, oddly enough, while they're doing all these transitions from the various segments in terms of changing clothes and doing all these things, they're often just packed together in a little closet, to kind of make these transitions. So there's a sense of teamwork, even though they're competing against each other. That's actually I actually like that part of the competition. So there's a whole part of it. And then we announce the winner and award trophy and prizes. You want to say anything? Or Jay being the person that experienced it most recently, I guess?
Actually, I was the
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Lex was last year.
I competed last year. It was an interesting experience for me. One thing I thought that was absolutely hilarious when it came to the questionnaire phase. Everyone else got simple questions. I got the most abstract one of how would you would describe the snow-capped mountain to a blind person? And I had my whole Miss America fantasy of to explain it beautifully. But what was interesting in it for me is I had all these what's the word? Not inconsistencies, insecurities about, I've never done a striptease for anyone ever. And I did one on stage. I definitely floundered. I didn't think I was hot. I thought it was more awkward. But, no one booed me. People clapped. As awkward as I was, people clapped. And, again, goes back to the basic values, because they accepted me for who I was. And no matter how awkward I was, I still got clapped or applauded. And that definitely was another step towards, for me, feeling my oats. And that's something that is magical about the competition, because, just be yourself, show your sexy side. No matter how awkward it is, someone will applaud you.
Yeah, those are definitely a busy 2 days, right, Lex?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Go home, directly asleep.
You're definitely on stage for 2 minutes stripping, and you're like, oh my God, this is the first time I've ever done this before in a bar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the nice thing about it too is that the people that I did it with, and what I hear for every person is, your fellow contestants, you end up really connecting with them.
Yeah, you do.
And having a really good time. Because I remember when I said my my Miss America response to that awkward abstract question, when I went up the stairs, the guy who actually won the contest was like, oh my God, bitch, yeah!
No, I was a contestant back in 2015, and I feel the same way. And you know what? With among the other five contestants, there were six of us that year. I am still in contact with every one of them because you form a bond when it's like your own little brotherhood all of a sudden, because you've all been through the ringer together. You've all had to answer the question. You've all had to do like bear talk, and you've all had to do the bare minimum striptease. And in Boston, you can't do everything because of Boston laws. But yeah, Jay and Lex, it's true. You are still friends with your fellow contestants years later.
You know, one of the things I love about I mean, I could have, having not ever been a contestant, but been the organizer of the torture, is watching, in that early afternoon on a Saturday before the night of the competition, one of the things that ends up happening due to just the dynamics of trying to get things done is that we use that time as an opportunity not only for the contestants to have their interviews with the judges, but also we do a lot of sound checks and here's run-throughs of each segment and stuff like that. And I mean, in the past, we've had people say, why do we spend so much time doing all this stuff in the afternoon? And part of the reason is that, well, part of that stuff has to be done because in some ways the competition is somewhat of a show. So you have to kind of run through the practice bits. But also I like the idea of watching, as the time progresses in that afternoon while each contestant's waiting on their turn to go and talk to the judges, you see the relationships developing amongst the contestants with each other. And that's I mean, I enjoy watching that. I think there's always kind of, dynamic amongst people, and hopefully there's little to no drama. But I think that's part of that building process of watching those guys kind of like figure out like, who are you? And, oh, what are you going to wear for the bare minimum strip down? And, all those kinds of things. It's kind of nice to watch that those are friendships being built there, hopefully. I mean, whether they continue or not is another story, but there's a start that's happening.
I agree with Shawn, because when I was a contestant and I didn't really get to see that, but you were part of it, and that felt really great and welcoming and getting to talk to everybody. But then being a judge the following year and actually being able to witness that, on your, it's special to watch, actually. I agree with that. Like, it's nice to see those friendships and bonds being made, and hopefully they last quite a while for them.
And so after the Mr. Bear and Cub competition, what do Mr. Bear and Cub do for the next year? Because I feel like there's some service baked into it, right?
Represent.
Yeah, so I mean, like Louis mentioned before, one of the things that we ask of the competition winner is to, really tell us about something that's important to them, and then allow us as helping hands, help you do something with that. So that's something that's a part of that. The other role as the contestant winner is also to kind of just represent the group. Your face is going to be out there everywhere when when you're out there, hopefully helping to collect toys for the toy drive, doing the push for that and the coat drives, and also just, being a representative of the group to just drive our mission. And that's top of the list for the title holders period.
So I'm getting close to the end of my list of questions, but I want to make sure that everyone who's here on Zoom, if you have questions or comments, or if you competed in Mr. Bear, or if you went to some of these events and want to tell us about them, please use the hand raise function. We'll unmute you. If you're on Facebook, drop your questions in the chat. We have somebody keeping an eye over there, just to remind people. So my next question is a little salacious. So when you have these social events and these charitable events and these fundraisers and all these other parts of your mission, are people, showing up to meet each other? Is there, oh, what is it? It's Scruff. It's been so long since I've left the house. It's not on my phone, and I haven't seen my friends who use it in months. So I was like, what's the bear grinder? So Growler. Oh,
And
excellent.
Scruff actually. Scruff actually just released a new function where you be like, because I'm a bear on it, their new function is that everyone that I see has an interest in bears.
Cute. So like, are guys coming and trying to hook up?
I wouldn't be surprised. and there's a part of me that hopes so. But yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times, I think people have different motives for showing up, but I'm sure that's one of them.
Yeah.
Raul says yes.
We actually, well, there have been years with the Mr. Boston Bear, Mr. Boston Cub contest where, the contestants, all of a sudden, he's like, there's the hot and heavy heat thing going on. And it's like, oh yeah, those two are hooking up. It happens. You get a bunch of guys together and, enough, it's going to happen anywhere. But, I think given the openness of our community, it happens probably a little bit more frequently than we would expect. But we always aren't aware of it either. But we know it happens, and we know couples who have met, or couples that come together. It's nice to see that as well, of couples that actually come to do some of the volunteer work or some of these social events with us as a couple as well. So it's fine either way as far as I'm concerned.
So one of the questions, and I'm mentioning to the audience that these are questions that mostly you guys put together with some help from me.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a fetish aspect to being a bear or being part of the Mass Bears and Cubs, or is that just a perception?
I would say that you, depending upon what we're doing, come with your fetish. But I think I think in our community, I mean, even in the bear community, there's definitely, various substratas of fetishes. And I mean, I think,
well,
again, go ahead.
Every year at Pride, we tend to be partnered with the leather community. And so, the leather guys interact with us a lot. There's a lot of overlap there as well. That's an interesting thing. The other thing that I've seen I haven't seen a lot of activity on our group page on Facebook, but the enablers, like the people that want their bear to be a little bit bigger bear, and so they love to feed their bear. It's there's health aspects, but then there's also the community aspect of what do you do to feed your bear and keep him nice and bear-like? A lot of that kind of stuff too. And I don't consider that always a fetish. It may be considered a fetish, but leather, the rubber community, we get a lot of invitations, and we see a lot of interaction with the people that like latex and rubber as well. So there is some of that happens.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't say that Mass Bears Cubs is a fetish organization.
No.
But we are welcome of people that have fetishes. But as an organization, we aren't a fetish organization. But there are people that do fetishize bears. I mean, I know. I mean, I've dated guys that are definitely bear chasers, and that while we're making out, they're caressing my stomach, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I'm like, well, whatever, if it's their fetish, then it's their fetish.
I mean, the other thing too is that, and I always say depending upon event, and I think I shared this story in another doing a storytelling time at the History Project, but one of the fundraisers we did a while ago for HRC was we got a whole lot of
undergarments.
Gear vendors to donate harnesses and jock straps and cock rings and all kinds of stuff. And we had a silent auction, and then we also had an auction where folks modeled some of the wares. I was one of those models. I don't know if reluctantly is the correct way to say it, but because I actually enjoyed it once I did it. But I mean, I think sometimes our events might kind of lead into some kind of fetishy kind of things. But I mean, again, it's to raise money, so as long as we're having fun.
Yeah, and I think I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek with my question, and
Of course.
there's not like a there doesn't have to be a straightforward answer necessarily, but I think it's important to sort of think about there's so many different facets of the LGBTQ community. There are different people involved with the Bears, and it's not all about having fun, but it's also not all about uh, doing community service or raising money. It's about all of it, and that's where some of this, I think, fetish or kink might come in.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that while we may not be a specific fetish organization, part of the basic values, specifically acceptance, is that you're not accepting people just for like how they look and who they are, but also what they like. Because I can tell you, I've met so many people in the bear community that have so many different tastes, likes, arousals, and while some of them may not have been my cup of tea, I've always been like, well, that's cool, different. And I accept them for who they are and what they like, because I like as an organization, as a community, everyone is so accepting, and if it's and yeah, anyway, so I just think that it's not just physical or mental, it's also accepting someone for everything that they are and giving them a space to feel welcome and a part.
Joan, I think Corey wanted to say something.
Oh, sure, Corey. I'm sorry if you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yay, hey, what's up? How you guys doing?
Hi.
My name is Corey. I'm a extraordinary human over here. But add to the conversation, I think one person belongs to many communities. And one of the things that's cool about the Mass Bears is that it's one of those communities that helps people build confidence and what I like to call self-actualization. There are many components to being a social group that we're lacking right now during social distancing. Everything from like saying hello to picking up traits to like the frequency and vibes of being in the same space with people that I think we help connect and help people feel comfortable by doing that. And then they bring their communities into it. They bring their art, their food, their experience into our group. And I think that's what makes it even better. At the core of it, the idea of offering support, access, and opportunity, I think overall is great for human well-being. And it's really cool to just be in a community that then recognizes you when other communities might exclude you. But we're never shy about the idea that people bring everyone and everything they've been before with them when they walk into our doors and walk into our groups. And the idea is we accept those things and create narratives where we can find commonality and create to like amplify everything.
That's cool. And I actually just wanted to point out that Corey is actually our newest board member. He he joined us, I believe we officially voted him on last week. So welcome, Corey.
Wonderful. Thank you, Corey, for that answer. You guys should clip that out and use it as a testimonial on your website because that was a very good explanation of, I think, what I've been bumbling around saying for like the last 15 minutes. So yeah, so we're sort of hitting that point in the evening where if the audience has any questions, but also if our panelists, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you've been thinking about, or anything that you want to share about what you do with Mass Bear and Cubs with the world?
I'll jump in on that one. I mean, one of the things that I kind of have always thought about, that I've contemplated over the time that I've been president of Mass Bears and Cubs, is that, and I think I want to share this as a way of inspiring folks, that if you have a thought about wanting to contribute to your community, is to chase that thought. I mean, for me, for me, all of this was like I said before, was kind of an accident. You know, I was just kind of, in real life, I was just kind of being lazy, and I knew that there was a group out there that did volunteer work with other groups. And as long as somebody told me what the appointment time was, I'll show up and mop the floors. I didn't care as long as I didn't have to arrange it. And you know, and I got caught up in it, and you know, next thing, you know, a year later, suddenly I'm being asked to lead the group. And in the process of doing that, one of the things that I had to tell myself is that, you know, you're gonna have to break a few of your own molds here and try to learn how to do different things, and also you know, try to understand the dynamics of a group that are not your employees, but you know, are folks that are volunteering to help you. And I think some of my friends in the past have said that, you know, Shawn, I think I can see how, you know, you were asked to lead this group because you're kind of bossy. and and you know, and I like to think that I've used that attribute to some degree to help us kind of move forward, but also to kind of continuously appreciate the team around me. I mean, I think that was something that I still am kind of in awe of, because sometimes I sit back and, you know, we have these weekly board meetings, and you know, I listen to all the thoughts that are being put forth and all the effort that are being put forth, and I realize, like, wow, you know, I'm not paying these guys to do this. They're doing it on their own. And that's all of it. That's the making the phone calls, putting up with the personalities. It's the trying to, you know, I talk this way, you talk that way, and we're trying to work together as a team. And how do we make sure we understand each other so that we actually execute the thing that we want to do? And it's actually learning the lessons that come with that have been amazing to me. So I think not only if you have a desire to get involved in your community, I definitely think you should chase the desire to the end of your energy, because it expands your mind in a way that I wasn't really expecting it, but I have enjoyed immensely in the time that I've been working with the group.
So we have James has risen, has his hands raised.
Mm-hmm.
James, do you know, can you unmute yourself?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Something I wanted to sort of say that is true of this group, but you know, it's sort of something about the bear community in general, at least, that I've noticed from, you know, the years going back that I started. I'm a librarian and I research things. And so in all the years that I've been looking at this community, there's a positivity that comes with it. And you very rarely say, oh, or hear people say, oh, those bears, I can't even with them. You know, who is getting along with these people? I mean, you know, that's just not what you hear said about a group that identifies as bears. And I mean, maybe they're out there, but especially with Mass Bears and Cubs, these events are trying not to use terms of art or value. I mean, but they're for good. They're building little red wagons to give to kids to have presents brought to them in. They're feeding people. They are raising money for, you know, Samaritans. This is not people who are reviewing country club memberships. You know, and I guess that was about it. It's just this idea that, you know, it's positivity. That's, you know, one of the major core values of this group, and it doesn't even need to be stated. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you, James, for that comment. I know that I always love working with the bears. It's one of my favorite. We get to have all these virtual meetings now, and I'm like, it's my bear night. I get to hang out with the bears and plan. Because you're a lot of fun, and you do so much good for the community in addition to having so much fun. So it's great to, from the periphery, hang out and be part of that. So Raul asks in the chat, what do you think the future of the bear community looks like? And actually, I'm going to piggyback. I'm going to give you a double question. What are y'all doing in COVID? How are you dealing? And what are you planning in the future around that?
Well, I think, well, the way we're kind of dealing with COVID is doing things like this. As I mentioned before, we as a group are meeting more often to try to kind of, I think, as a group that's traditionally been used to doing in-person events, and then, also just kind of having what I like to call our feelers out in the community where, we have all of our various members and associate members talking to various people out there. And then all of a sudden, for all that to stop, it's a heck of a left turn to go from being such a hyperly social group, literally, to all of a sudden we have to figure out how to interact through all these virtual ways. So I mean, part of the exercise of trying to adapt is actually, like I said, doing this. This is actually, I think, our first public live event that we've done, and it was a little, it was something of an undertaking to kind of figure out, how we wanted to talk about the messages that we wanted to convey and how we would share, the knowledge of it out in the community. I think, one of the things that we discussed in our second to last meeting, I believe, is that we actually kind of feel like, well, no matter what happens, we actually kind of want to stick with doing virtual things. Continue doing obviously our physical in-person stuff, but to actually have this out there, because part of the thing, to kind of get at your question, Raul, is that we have a really hard time getting to some of the folks that are not the closest to us. So there's, a lot of folks out there in Western Mass that are always saying, hey, when are you gonna come this way? Or, when are you guys gonna do an event out here? And I mean, logistically, it's kind of tough to, start to do 100 and 125 miles away events. So, I mean, we're wondering whether or not we can use the virtual world to kind of supplement, that to actually reach those folks. And, that's something that we'll just have to, work on to developing that, especially because there's one of the things I noticed in our Facebook group is there's a lot of folks that are out in those areas that are interacting. So we know that they want to talk. It's just a matter of developing the most effective ways to get at them and make sure we can.
Yeah, Shawn, we've also had, organizations reach out. For instance, Solutions at Work over in Cambridge came to us and said, it's summertime and we've got, kids and families that are affected by COVID that need supplies. And once again, because of COVID, their supply centers have dwindled. And so, we put out on our page, on our web page, our Facebook page, a link to buy materials and supplies for them, things from diapers to swim trunks for kids, that kind of stuff. Solutions at Work has, once again, they are not an LGBT organization. They are for, homeless and displaced families. And, they came to us. We do the toy drive for them every year. And, it really felt good that they came to us and said, we need some help. And we were able to do that via the web and social media. We were able to help a little bit, not as much as as it would have been nice to, but what Shawn was saying is it's nice to be able to do that in-person stuff, but we're learning to use the social media tools and skills as well.
Yeah.
So, we're further on for events, the Mr. Boston Bear, Mr. Boston Cub competition, we have an alternative lined up. We know we won't be able to do that this year. It's always a fun event, watching, having a room full of people and some judges lined up and a stage and music and a couple of performers, and then watching a bunch of hot men go down to bare minimum. It's always a fun night. We know that's not going to happen this year, but we're planning another event to take its place, and hopefully next year we'll be back in business. Same for our boat cruise. Hopefully next year we'll be back in business with it, because those are our two big events.
And be on the lookout for more announcements on that, on the event that will replace the Mr. Boston Bear in Cub competition. I think it'll find it interesting. There was another COVID-related event I wanted to talk about, and I've lost it. I've lost my train of thought.
Bagley, we wanted to have, once again, a fundraiser for, our Mr. Boston Cub winner this year, and said, yeah, let's get school supplies for school-age children. And we're going to partner with Bagley because they're a wonderful organization, and we know a lot of the members of Bagley. And unfortunately this year we can't do an in-person fundraiser. So once again, that's going to be a Facebook Live event, and actually Lex has picked up that torch, and he's going to be leading that effort later this month or next month.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and the other things that we're doing to try to adapt to kind of like this virtual world that we're living in is that also we're trying to kind of work to I guess the best way to say it is passively raise money, so that folks who want to support our effort can do things like, we now have an Amazon Smile account. So if you go to Amazon and look up Amazon Smile, you're actually able to select Mass Bears and Cubs as a organization you want to support, and a percentage of your purchases, I should say a percentage of your qualified purchases will be donated to us. So, and I mean, it's a very small percentage, but I guess the idea is that if you hop on, and if instead of, when you log in, if you set yourself up for Amazon Smile, what happens is that you'll log in and it will say, hey, you have an Amazon Smile account also, do you want to log into that and support your favorite charity? So we're doing things like that. The other thing we have going, and again, you'll see more announcements about this later, but we've actually found a merch provider, so which is where this lovely gym, my virtual background is screwing it up. Oh, there we go. We have merch now, so we have all kinds of things: t-shirt, mugs, hat, and those are actually being done through Bonfire, which is an organization that helps organizations manufacture their merchandise. But you'll see more about that coming soon. So I mean, we're trying to evolve in a way that is, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, that is not so in person, but that we can still kind of do our activities to help support the organizations that we support. I mean, the volunteer stuff has been really hard. I mean, I think volunteering groups are just now kind of starting to, I know there's been a lot of like social distance and volunteering going on at, I think I heard about a group doing something at the Boston food pantry. Food pantry, is that the right? Is it called?
Food bank.
Food bank, yes.
Yeah.
So I know that those kinds of things are happening. So I'm hoping we can get back to doing some in-person volunteering when it kind of feels, when there's a good margin of safety.
Mm-hmm. So I think that the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence did a trash pickup day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, say on a personal note, in New England, it's hard to imagine what we're all going to start doing as soon as it starts getting real cold.
Right.
So let's just compartmentalize that real quick. So we have, Dan, you've had your hand up for a while. If you want to unmute and pop back.
Sure, I'm going to pop back. First of all, I want to shout out to Lewis for inviting me to this event. He and I go fairly well back, and this is my first exposure to this entire group. So thank you so much, Lewis, for inviting me. And Joan, you've been doing a great job moderating. So thank you for that. There's two words that keep resonating with me. It's about community relationships and giving back. And I just think back to the Gay Pride Parade 2 years ago when I marched down Berkeley Street with Elizabeth Warren, side by side with her wearing her rainbow boa. And, that can't happen right now. And I so miss that. And we're all talking about this virtual experience and what we're doing. And as I mentioned earlier, my church is doing a lot of work virtually for fundraising and partnering with local communities, not just here in Mass or in Boston, but all throughout the country. In fact, I have to hop on a call momentarily, so I'm going to have to drop right after this. But we're doing a Get Out the Vote campaign in a lot of the swing states, not politically motivated, just informing them on how they can get out there and vote. And that's been a really galvanizing way for us to leverage this virtual experience. And the Unitarian Church has developed this platform that we use to reach out and just engage. And also, I'm heavily involved in HRC, and just giving back to the community. That's something that just really goes right here to my heart again. So thank you all. James, I loved your comments about your experience and some of the things that you expressed earlier. That was really wonderful. But thank you so much, and hopefully soon we'll be able to march down the street with Elizabeth Warren again with a rainbow boa around all of us.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. And one of the things I like that Dan mentioned was that, one of the things that it's kind of funny is that, so because we have so many different things going on, we have a calendar of events, and I always have all of these calendar notifications to kind of remind me that, oh, yep, it's that time again, you got to do this or whatever that is. And I tell you, for all of our regular events, I get little notifications because they're still on my personal calendar. And a little piece of me dies every time I see Bear Tea Dance tonight. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I'm looking forward to having those things again. Plus, I think the other thing I'm looking forward to doing in person again is to kind of like not only connect with the individual folks, but to connect with the groups again, to work with the sisters again, to get a chance to sit around a table with Joan in person and, laugh and work on whatever the next thing we're going to be working on is. I'm looking forward to doing that because, as great as technology is, there's still nothing like sitting in front of your friends and clinking a glass and discussing ideas or just having a laugh, in person.
Exactly. Cheers to that.
Yeah,
and
cheers, Dan. I saw
that. It is great and I think interesting. I don't know if other organizations do this, but you have those 2 Facebook pages, which I think is so awesome. Mm-hmm. Because you have the one that talks about the sorts of events you're doing and the things that you do as a group. And Tony is posting all these amazing photos from former events. And I know you and I found one of the old websites, and it's just like, it's a lot of fun. And then you have the group where people are chiming in and saying, did you see this? Have you gone to this place? As sort of an anthropologist who's been in the group so that we can live stream tonight, but not really in the group. Mm-hmm. It's been great to see people being like, hey, I'm feeling cute today. Can you reinforce how cute I'm feeling? Because I look awesome. And it's just like, it's so positive, and it's another place where you're bringing in these this camaraderie and this community feeling, even though you're not doing it, in the same, you're not in the alley doing it, but right. You're still on Facebook, you're still out there, and hopefully the world will go back to a state where we can be in the same room sooner rather than later. But until then, at least you all are still connecting and, saving up some of those bear hugs.
Well, and I definitely want to motivate anybody who's not on the group to actually join it, because it's interesting to watch folks and also participate in some of the posts that happened. I think that was probably one of our first kind of innovations, at least after I think I joined with Indigo, was that we kind of thought about the idea that we have an outward facing way of talking to people, but we don't have a way for them to talk to each other. And so that's when we set up that group, and it's actually been I was actually very surprised at how fast it grew. But it's been a lot of fun to participate in and watch it.
Awesome. So we're heading towards 8, and I think that's about our stopping time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that everyone who's been here needs to get a refill and a drink anyway. It's been a little bit. So just, I would like to say thank you so much for letting me ask you these questions, for being so candid with your answers. It was my pleasure. It's, like I said at the beginning, at the top of the hour and a half, I'm with the History Project. We document and preserve the history of our LGBTQ communities. And I think it's so important to work with organizations so they can talk about that history and that feeling and that experience themselves. And so we know, in a way, what it's like to be a bear in Boston in 2020, and what it means to you all to be part of this community, and what this community means to the wider community. And I think that's really awesome. So since we have just a couple minutes left, Louis, Shawn, Lex, Jay, who hasn't chimed in for a little bit, do you have any final thoughts for us?
Well, the only thing I would do is thank everybody for participating, and for those who donated, thank you again. That's really great, and actually it's been a lot of fun.
I would say, if anyone's interested in volunteering or other opportunities within the organization, to email me. My personal email is lex.brown421@gmail.com.
Or you can email massbearsandcubs@gmail.
True, that's true too. But yeah, if anyone wants to volunteer or is interested in the board, send me a message and let's, start a conversation.
No, and I definitely want to thank Joan too for doing this event and hosting, and it's great to actually get to know what the History Project's all about and what you're doing as well. So, helping us out and getting the word out to other, bears and cubs, we need to add in there.
And cubs.
Let's not forget about our cubs now. But, thank you very much for, holding us tonight and, talking to us and everything.
I also want to thank you, Joan, and it's great to see you. It's been, last time I saw you was at Alfie's place.
I know, I was gonna say, last time we saw each other, I was celebrating getting this job, I think. So,
and I was in drag.
Yeah, and you were in drag.
I actually want to jump on the piggyback too. That I think one of the other things that's been great about being involved with the group is actually our interaction with the History Project, because it's been a very fun partnership. I can't remember how it started. I think it was the Hanky fundraiser at Blend, maybe.
Maybe.
Was that our first time?
That might have been. I think that was our first foray. I think that it may have been called Silver at the time.
Yeah.
I know it was through Stevie.
Yeah.
And I know, and Raul is here too. Raul's our resident historian on the Hanky Code. And the History Project has done a couple of fundraisers where we print out copies of one of the codes and we sell some hankies and we raise some money to support our work. And we've worked with you guys a couple of times doing that, and it's just fun. It's fun to, it's fun to go out. It's fun to flag. It's all good.
I think Joan should be our mama bear.
Mama Cub, thank you.
On a kind of like related note, have you seen that? Like I saw this post of someone relating the Hanky Code and converting it to masks.
Oh yeah. So there have been I've seen the Hanky Code as masks, and I'm sure Raul can hop in the chat and link us. But the Leather Archives was selling hanky masks at one point, and I was like, we should have thought of that. But
and it totally like makes sense, but also like with the times that we're in, it really puts a like a fun spin on wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
and
exactly what we need.
And just to bring back around the kink, glory holes are back in 2020, which so many other things have happened this year. We're still recording, so you know. But you know, so many other things have happened this year. But at least a bright spot. So, all right, it's 8:01.
For that moment of levity, because you know it's like we do this for fun. We really do. And we wouldn't be able to do it without people like you, with all the people that volunteer and, you know, the people that show up. It's like, I know I see some familiar faces. Hello, everybody. It's like, good to see my friends on Facebook, at least. It's like, thank you for joining us. And we have a wonderful team of volunteers. You know, none of us can do it alone. That's the other part I have to say is this organization, people really do come together. And, you know, Joan, this has been a heck of a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome. It is absolutely my pleasure to get to spend the evening with the Mass Bears and Cubs. And with that, we'll end tonight's conversation. We recorded it, so we're going to put it up on the History Project's YouTube page. So it'll be part of history. And otherwise, yeah, I'll just say to our audience, keep an eye on the Mass Bears and Cubs. You guys are still doing a lot, even if we're not doing it in person. And like I said, you're saving up the bear hugs for later on. So thank you all. And thank you to our panelists, to Louis, to Jay, to Shawn, to Lex, Peter. Thank you for moderating the Facebook chat and involving people over there. And thank you to everyone who had questions and comments and were part of this conversation tonight. So have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.